Greetings. My name is Letitia Hensley, and I'm the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools Director of Family and Community Engagement. We are excited that you are joining us today and know you will gain great insight from this session. At the conclusion of today's session, please provide feedback so that we can continue to support you with amazing sessions that will be provided throughout the year. Now, without further ado, we'll turn it over to our presenters.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Claudia Allen, and I'll be presenting today Unpacking the DIBELs Home Connect Letter. As we talk about it, we're in this season in the beginning of the year in our school system where we give many assessments. One of those is the DIBELs assessment to our students in grades K-3. And so we're going to get started. This is my Ditties for School Improvement team, also known as the School Improvement and Data Integration. We have Ryan Riebeck, our director, and you see me there, Claudia Allen. And then we have 5 other members, some of whom might be on the call this evening. And we support CMS with all things the data and school improvement and how to best use data to inform our district-wide school improvement process. So what we would like to do, we'd like to start with what we would like to think of as a pre-quiz to grab some data, because we are the data person. So this is Poll Everywhere. And before we begin our conversation around DIBELs, we wanted you to just do a quick Poll Everywhere for us. You can join on the web by going to this pollev.com/Claudia Allen 859. Or if you'd like to just text, you send Claudia Allen 859 and your response message to 2233. Here's what I would like for you to respond to once you get in. Using the link or the text information, answer this question. Use a single word, one word. What is DIBELs? So if you've ever heard or you think whatever DIBELs is, just go ahead and enter one word. And you can respond up to 3 different times. So one word, 3 different times. So just take a few minutes and go ahead and jot down one word you think of when you hear the word DIBELs. Just waiting for a few more minutes for everyone to gain access, either via the web or the text before I advance to the next slide. Just making sure everyone has a chance to grab that so they can participate. So it says no one has responded yet. Hang tight. So I'm going to wait and hang tight to see if you guys are able to drop in the chat. And if I'll wait another 30 seconds or so, and then I'll give you some possible, or maybe if you don't have any possible answers, hopefully, and that might be a good thing, not having any answers, by the end of the session, you'll know exactly what DIBELs is. So I'm still not seeing any responses. And a pre-assessment is just that. What do you know? And if you don't know anything, great. This puts my time with you today to be very valuable. And hopefully you'll have lots of words to just drop and describe DIBELs at the end of the session. So we're just going to continue moving and jump right into my next slide. What is DIBELs? So as you're taking a look at what DIBELs is, this is the who, what, when, why, and how of the DIBELs assessment. And as I mentioned previously in a couple of slides back, the DIBELs assessment is offered to our K-3 students in CMS. And when you think about the word DIBELs, it stands for something. It means Dynamic Indicators of basic early literacy skills. So in just said in another way, our K through 3 students take this assessment to gauge their understanding and their use of foundational early literacy skills. Within CMS, we do offer the assessment 3 times per year to assess how our students in grades K3 are progressing in their foundation literacy skills. You'll see here for this particular year, it is currently running from September 3rd to the 23rd. And then the next time the students will take the assessment again is January 9th through the 31st. And the last window will be in May 8th through 29th. So each of these windows, the students are, there's a rubric that tells you where they're supposed to be, and those students are measured on their progress towards each of those 3 times of year mark. So why do the students take the DIBELs assessment? The assessment measures how well students are learning basic foundational literacy skills. And as you know, that's very critical in everything that we do in our personal and educational and in our career. We have to read. So how do students get assessed in DIBELs? So this assessment in K3 is made up of a series of short tests that evaluates the student's skills, such as their students knowing their letter and sound, being able to recognize those letters and sounds, decoding words. So how do they pronounce? If they see a new word, can they pronounce without prior knowledge by breaking it down into various syllables? Phonemic awareness, how they're hearing those sounds. The fluency, how fast and how at what fast pace can they say those words is going to roll off their tongue in a very nice fluent way. And it also assesses their vocabulary. Are they building their vocabulary over time, age appropriate vocabulary, and as well as their comprehension. Are they comprehending what they were reading? So this assessment are the short skills tests. And again, it varies grades K through 3, and you'll see an example of that as we go further into the presentation. So at the end of these 3 times of year, the assessment platform provides what is called the Home Connect report. And this is a family report. So this report is what really goes home with the students at the end of the assessment window. So what is Home Connect? It is a report generated after each DIBELs assessment that provides the families with information about their child, their student performance on the assessment. So parents should expect and families should expect this Home Connect letter within 2 weeks after the window closes. So as you see here in the beginning of the year, the window will close next Monday. So within 2 weeks, expect that your child should be bringing that Home Connect letter home. And in January, again, the assessment ends on January 31st. So by mid-February, that letter should be in your child's hand coming home. And then in May, the last date is the 29th of May of next year in the last window. And so then you'll expect that Home Connect would come home with your student around the 1st and 2nd week of June. So to expect that Home Connect that really helps you to understand how your student is developing across those foundational skills for their grade level. Your child should be bringing this home. It is produced within the system, and the teacher has to print it. If you go in for any kind of school visit with the teacher after those within the end of the window, you're more than welcome to request a copy of that Home Connect letter. And the 2 languages that is provided in is in English and Spanish. So we're going to spend some time just exploring the components of the Home Connect letter so you'll be versed at the end of this session on what you're looking at and how to understand and support your child with the information that's provided on the Home Connect letter. So let's begin exploring what it looks like. What you'll see here and from the left side to the middle of your screen is a small version of the Home Connect letter. It is a 2-page report, and we're going to go through each of those sections one at a time. So just getting an overview. This is on the first page of the Home Connect letter. There's an overview section, and again, we're going to dive deeply into this as we continue. Then there is a skills review section that breaks down how your student performed in each of the skills and what those skills are. And then on page 2, you have the activities section, and we'll dive deeper into, and these activities section really provides families with ways to support their children based on their child's performance. And these are recommendations for home support. So let's go back now to the overview section of the first area. So as I'm clicking, you're going to see various parts of the Home Connect letter being highlighted. And okay. So in the overview section, the first things you'll see is not only the name of the assessment and the name of the report, but also you should see your child's name. Here, this student name is Samir Ali. Then in the overview section to the right, you'll see the name of the school, you'll see when the assessment was given, and you'll see when the student will take the assessment again. Although I provided you with those 3 windows earlier, those dates, that information is also provided for you in the overview section. Also in the overview section, it will give you a quick synopsis of why Samir is being assessed. So it will you a brief synopsis as why your child is taking that assessment. As I mentioned earlier, it's just gauging and giving the teacher as well as families information around how their students are progressing and what skills they have at the foundational literacy level. Then you'll also notice what do the below assessment mean. So further down when we get into the skills area, it's kind of like giving you here an overview just for a brief understanding of what you're going to be looking at in the report. Over on the right side, you will see a couple of things. You'll see where it says DIBELs composite score. So remember I mentioned a slide back or 2 slides ago that the DIBELs assessment is broken down into several small subtests. So when to say the composite scores is taking all of those subtests and averaging that score and providing you with a score of how your child did on the entire assessment. So you'll see here for Samir, that score is a 363 as a composite score. So that's how Samir, for this particular sample student, performed on this overall test. And you notice there's a red circle around that. I'm going to describe and give you information about that on my next slide. Also, it also gives you a color bar key with some information about how your child has performed and what type of support your child will need. And we're going to see this in the next click, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. So with that being said, remember I talked about you will see over the DIBELs composite score on the right-hand side, and right underneath this particular sample, it says has met goal. And how do we know that? So you see that 374 with that green circle. That green circle score aligns with where the student performed on the overall test. So overall, in all of the skills tests, the subtest, when this student was assessed, this student met the goals. And as I mentioned, for every grade, for the 3 times of the year the student takes the test, there's a goal that the student needs to reach to say that they're on grade level. This particular student on this test has met the goal. But what you can also find, while a student has met the overall goal, there might be some areas that the student has achieved higher in that area or achieved a little bit below, which tells you kind of where they're struggling and where they're achieving and where they're surpassing per se their grade level. But that green circle around the composite score gives you an indication, as that red arrow is pointing to that green area, that this child or your child has scored within that color. So one of the things you want to look for as a parent is the color around the composite score. While the number might not mean anything to you, the color will indicate to you what type of achievement did your child meet goal. And then let's take a look at these colored bars. Notice under the red area, it says well below benchmark. So if your child composite score has a red circle, you can know overall your child was below benchmark, meaning they were not at grade level and they were far below grade level. If your child, let me go back, if your child scores in the yellow area, notice right under the yellow, it says below benchmark. So that also tells you that while they're not on grade level, they're just slightly below the grade level standards. The green tells you, it says at benchmark. It means that the child is performing at the grade level expectation at that point in time in the year. And then the blue part of that bar represents above benchmark, which is above goal, above grade level. So your child can perform overall in the composite, the total score, at any one of these 4 marks. I want you to look right above those colored areas. Look above the red area. You see where it says most support. If your child scores in the red, and you'll see the red around the composite score, it's telling you that your child needs a lot of support. That child score in that area needs a lot of support. If they're in the yellow section, notice the words above the yellow bar, it says some support. So your child is struggling in a few areas and need just a few support to get them over to get to goal. And then if they're in the green, it says they're at goal. So your child is performing exactly where they're supposed to perform at the grade level. And if your child is in the blue with the blue circle around the composite, then your child will be above grade level, performing above where they're supposed to be. Where you will be able to lean in specifically is if your child is in the most support or some support area. It doesn't hurt anyway to support your child in the goal, if they're meeting goal or above goal, but just wanted to call out to you as a parents and families how to support your student by just looking at these colors and what these colors mean. So the color is what you want to pay attention to, not necessarily the number. The number is more so for teachers and statisticians. The color is what you're referencing and what kind of support your child needs. So moving on to that second section on page 1, which is the skills review section. One of the first things you'll notice about the skill review section on that area that I just put that red rectangular shape around is that you'll notice the skills that your child is being assessed on are labeled there. So for example, in this particular assessment, the students have to know their letter names. The student must know their phonemic awareness, their decoding, and so on and so on. And right below the skills name, you'll also notice that it describes for you when they say letter names, what exactly is the child doing in that subtest. So this does a great job of telling you what the test was and give you a brief description of what your child had to do during that test. Over to the right is how your child performed on that subtest. And you'll notice here, those color bars that we mentioned earlier in the last slide are here. Sometimes you'll see 3 bars. Sometimes you'll see all 4 colors. So depending on how your child performed in each of those skills, and for each skill, this test is broken down. So the score we saw on the last slide is the composite score. Here you'll see the breakdown that makes up that composite score. I want to also call something out to you. Notice a circle just went around that area with a number. So for that particular test, the phonemic awareness, this student is in the well below area that needs most support. And that score, again, there's a score there, but I'm not going to ask families to focus on the score. You're focusing on what the color is and what does the color mean and what kind of support do I need to provide for my child. So that's one of the things you want to pay attention to. Again, some other examples. I just highlighted here for letter names, from this example, you notice the student score is in the green area. Again, the green area means the child's performing on goal, at goal, on grade level. And it will also give you, when we get down to the supports, they will also provide supports for your child at this area. Notice for the phonemic awareness, another example is you might see your child's score or your student's score in the some support, the yellow area. So you want to pay attention to, for each of the subtests, how your student is performing in each of the areas by looking at where that score is landing and then remembering, and then you'll have the report in your hand. So you'll see that it says most support, some support, at goal or above goal. So that's just one way to understand the breakdown of how your child is performing. What do you want to look for here is how your child is performing in the different areas. Where are they very strong and successful and at or above goal? And what areas are they needing most support or some support? And that's where you want to focus your support in helping your child to become a stronger literacy student. The second page has some information to support parents is the activities. So when your student takes the assessment, the report that comes home is specific to your child. And what it's going to identify for you are areas of how you can support your child in getting better in literacy. And so the activities that are here are tailor-made based on the gaps. And I will say this again, the activities that are here are specific to where the system has identified gaps in your child's reading abilities and say you can make your student a stronger reader or stronger in literacy skills if you do these things. So it's specific to the gap areas that your students are needing support in. So even if your students are at the at goal or above goal, it is still going to provide for you where your students like gap area is, because we all could always improve. So again, and these activities are parent friendly, and we do want to call out here, teachers are very happy if you ever see anything on this Home Connect report in the activities section and you're not sure, how can I support my child, or I don't have the resources at home. I can tell you, being a former administrator in an elementary school, we loved when families asked. We are quick to make and give and provide resources. So don't even think about, I don't have these resources at home. Your child's teacher is more than willing to support families who are willing to support their child. And these, like I said, this is very user-friendly to families to support their child to become better readers in literacy. One of the things now, moving beyond the reports, every child in every grade has a different assessment based on their grade level. So a kindergarten student takes a different set of assessments in the first, second, and third grade. So what I want to call out to you here, depending on the grade that your child is in, K-3, they take a different assessment. And if you have multiple children, one in K, one in second, one in third, then it'd be great to be able to compare that. But just want to call out here that the skills that the students are assessed on is grade specific. And this is an example of the kindergarten area. And you can notice that in the kindergarten test, there are things like letter names, phonemic awareness, decoding. And as we move on now to a first grade, we see some of the same things in a first grade. So first in kindergarten and first grade, usually there are some skills that they are taking the same. But as we progress to second grade, you notice what comes off are like the letter names and the decoding, because by second grade, students should be advanced, more advanced in their foundational literacy skills. So second grade is where we start seeing the difference in what's being assessed on the DIBELs assessment. And then this is third grade. Again, we see some other differences here. So again, across the grades, the test is different. And even at the 3 different benchmark times, what they're required to know and their level of fluency and proficiency, how well they know what they know, changes. So while your child could be above in the beginning of the year in one skill, if they don't progress like they're supposed to, they could easily fall at the below or well below mark by middle of the year. So you want to keep an eye and keep these reports and compare them over the course of the year to see if your child is moving accordingly across in the grade level, if they're progressing in the manner in which, and your child's or students' teacher will be more than happy to sit down and engage in conversations. If you bring this Family Connect or call them or ask for a Zoom or Teams meeting to go over this Connect report. And it's great to see from BOI to the middle of the year, from beginning of the year to the middle of the year, and just have conversation to see and to ask and how my child is doing across time. So again, just know that it's grade specific, and even throughout the year, that your child is supposed to be able to grow accordingly, because their benchmark goal changes over the 3 points of the year. So that's the Home Connect report. And now what we would like to do, we just want to spend a few minutes just giving you a quick post-assessment, we started with a pre-assessment, and no one kind of like knew, didn't drop in the chat. Here is now, we've spent some time, about 20 minutes or so, just going over the Home Connect letter. So here is an example of Leah's Home Connect letter. So notice I've identified the overview section, the skills section, and the activities section. There are 4 questions here that I just want you to explore. This is really not a test, just for you to explore. And if you have a resource that you can write on in the space where you are, that would be great if you can engage with us. So take a few minutes to answer these 4 questions. What is the date of Leah's next assessment? And I kind of gave a hint, it's in the overview section, right? Then the second question says, name one skill area Leah scored at benchmark in the green. So I gave you another hint, it's in the green and it's in the skill section. The third question asks, based on the composite score, and I showed you where the composite score was, what kind of support does Leah need? And that's going back to, again, the overview section and what color is around that score, and then you match that up. And the fourth question we want you to understand, to respond to, is the activity section on the right-hand side of your slide. What is one activity you can do with Leah at home? So again, 4 questions. And then what I'm going to say is to go ahead and answer those questions. I'm going to tell you when to drop those in the chat for us. And Molly, who's on the call with us, is going to tell us when I say go. So I'm going to give you around 4 minutes to grab an answer using the document on the slide. So you're going to use the information right here on Leah's report and answer those 4 questions. And after 4 minutes, I'm going to ask you to then start typing when I say, what's your answer for number 1, you can just put your answer in the chat. When I say, what's your answer for number 2, you can put that in the chat, 3, and so on and so on. So I'm going to start the timer for 4 minutes and then give you 4 minutes for you to respond to those questions. I'm gonna start my timer. I don't see my timer on my screen, but I'll start it on my phone. So again, jot your answers down somewhere, and when we ask for the response in the chat, then you can just drop it in the chat. Another 2 more minutes to grab those answers in the scavenger hunt of DIBELs information, and we're going to start sharing in the chat. 30 more seconds, and then we're going to start dropping our answers in the chat. All right, and wrapping up in another 5 seconds. And time. So Molly, I'm going to first ask for you to read off for me, participants, if you don't mind, drop it in the chat. What is the date of Leah's next assessment?
I know it might be a little tricky to read on the screen, Claudia, but I believe
Okay.
that says March 30th, if I'm correct.
Yes, that is correct. And how do we know that? That's right up here in the overview area where it says the next assessment. Thank you. Our next question says, what is one skill area that Leah scored at benchmark in the green? Does anyone have a response for that?
Okay, I know once again it's a little hard, especially if we're on our phone. Oh,
yes.
we have a member typing. Let's see.
And again, how do we know? We know based on where the line is on the right-hand side on that color grid. And so we're looking for where there's a score by a green area for Leah.
Okay, it says 63. We're having a little trouble reading those words, but
Yes, yes.
63, yes, ma'am. I believe that would be the top row, if I'm correct,
Yes,
Miss
that's
Claudia.
letter names. So Leah's at benchmark 63 in letter names, and she's also at benchmark in decoding. So we'd be correct with either one of those answers. So there was 2 answers. Great job. And then the third question is asking about now Leah is doing well in letter names and decoding, but based on the composite score, what kind of support does Leah need? So remember, there's a coloring that I mentioned that we need to help focus on. What color is that? And then what kind of support is that, does she need? And that's in the overview section.
Yes, we have phonemic support in the chat.
Okay, so let me see her phonemic. Yes, in phonemic awareness, she's yellow. So yes, so the composite score, there's a yellow circle around it. So overall for Leah, she does need some support, and definitely you can see where that correlates in the test is in the phonemic awareness. So, but just overall, Leah needs some support in that phonemic awareness. Thank you. And her overall composite score says she needs some support. So Leah, while she's doing good in some areas, she's on grade. I don't want to say doing good. Let's use the word on grade level. She's at goal. In other areas, she could need some support. And one of those is phonemic awareness. And our last question, what is one activity? And again, this might be hard to read, you can do with Leah at home. So there was 3 recommendations over here on the right-hand side that Leah could do at home. What's one of them?
Count sounds.
Yes. Count the sounds. Yes. So again, and the descriptor below the title really tells the families what this looks like when you're doing it with Leah. So great answers, great participation. Thank you so much. So again, just really wanted to do a session that's really timely. As we mentioned, the first end of the beginning of the year DIBELs window ends next Monday. So within the next 2 weeks, if you have a K-3 student in CMS, this Home Connect report should be coming home. And hopefully from this session, you'll be able to engage with your child and student in not only understanding the report, but knowing where you can support your child and student at home and in what activities, and definitely engage with the teacher and school leaders around supports if you need resources to do that with your student. So hopefully you got some information from this. And at this time, I do want to ask, are there any questions from our participants today at this session? Are there any questions I could answer for you?
Claudia, we did have one question in the chat that said, are principals told that these Home Connect letters should go home within those 2 weeks?
Yes, they are told at when our department, the state and federal testing, do the trainings with the testing coordinators, because they're testing coordinators, and the facilitators for literacy are told that. And that's why we want to emphasize that they are told. If you don't receive it, a friendly reminder to your teachers, to your child's teacher or your student's teacher would be a great way to say, hey, I heard about this Connect letter that's supposed to come home. So yes, they're told and they're no, but in school life, so many things on. So a nudge and a friendly reminder doesn't hurt. Are there any other questions? That was a great question.
The other question that came through was, will materials be shared via email? And yes, we will share the recording and possibly the slide deck as well, just to make it a little easier to see if anyone was having any trouble seeing today's presentation.
Great. Well, so let's continue, and if definitely until we're here for if you have any other questions as we move on. So I want to say thank you on behalf of the School Improvement and Data Integration team. We are always excited to support our CMS families and communities in just understanding how to engage with us a little deeper, as we all are in this to ensure that our students are achieving and progressing and has the best learning experience as we connect with you and collaborate with you for that experience. So we want to thank you for joining our Family Academy today, and please provide us feedback. We want to get better. We really want to tailor these sessions to your needs and what you would like to know more about or how you want to engage with us. So using the link below, please provide your feedback, and we are so grateful for your attendance as well as taking time out to participate and sharing your voice in this session today. And we truly appreciate the collaboration and the work we do as a team for our students.